Good morning, everybody. I'm Nick McCrae, Chair of TCHC's Board's Building Investment Finance and Audit Committee. Welcome to the public session of today's committee meeting. Let me begin with an acknowledgement that the land each of us is on as we hold this virtual meeting is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. We acknowledge that the Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. With that, we'll go to a declaration regarding conflict of interest. I have one noted regarding one of the items. Are there any others to note at this time on any items on the agenda? Okay, we'll move to items to be held as part of the consent agenda. We have 3 items that we have presentations on that will be held regardless, 8, 10, and 11B. I'll ask committee members any other items to be held for discussion on today's meeting.
Sure. 9.
Thank you. Do we not have we don't have the AG? It's not a presentation?
It's not the AG, it's the AG's,
Only if it's held.
I'm right with us now. So she, I think, has some prepared comments, but not.
So we'll hold it. Okay, hold 6. Any other items to hold?
Hi, Nick. 8,
8, yeah, we've got 8.
11A,
11A, yep.
A and 12B, please. And 13C and 13D.
C and D. Okay, any other items we held by directors? Or sorry, committee members? We're also directors. Okay. C and D. So in terms of the consent agenda, everything except for
So motion to approve everything on the AG, except we have himself and 13B.
okay, with that, I'll ask for a motion to approve the consent agenda subject to the held items and 13B. Can I have a motion, please? Thank you, Vanita. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. And then I'll ask,
So
It's been silent on this side. I'm not sure if something got muted on the boardroom end.
Sorry, Director Jaguar, can you hear me now? Perfect. You had identified a conflict in relation to item 13B.
That's correct.
So I'm going to ask if you can turn your camera off for a moment while we deal with that item in your absence.
Thank you.
With the director off, I'll ask for a motion to approve that item as part of the consent agenda. Thank you, Brian. All in favor? Thank you. Carried. Okay, back to our regular scheduled programming. What do we have first? 6? We'll go to item 6, which is the Auditor General's office as it relates to status of previous Auditor General recommendations. I believe there was a couple remarks prepared. If that's the case, we welcome them now.
Great. Thank you so much, Chair. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, thank you.
Great. So good morning, everyone. I'm Tara Anderson, Auditor General for the City of Toronto. And with me today online are Ina Chan, Deputy Auditor General, as well as our team, Patricia Lee, Elaine Liu, and VTAC Cam, who worked on this follow-up review. I'd like to give a brief introduction to my report before opening the floor to any questions you may have. First, I'll give a little background about the follow-up process itself, and then I'll go over the results of my office's follow-up of audit recommendations from 2 previous audits of TCHC. First, how our follow-up process works and why it matters. We follow up on the implementation status of open recommendations from our reports to verify that recommendations are fully implemented and are achieving their intended benefits. For TCHC, recommendations are adopted first through the TCHC BIFAC and board before being forwarded to the city's audit committee and city council. Recommendations are then entered in my office's online tracking system, and management updates our office using that online system, providing their action plans for implementing recommendations, and they can upload supporting documents at any time for recommendations reported as fully implemented. We normally wait at least a year after a report is issued before including recommendations into our citywide follow-up process to give time for management to take action to address recommendations. For example, the recommendations included in Phase 1 and Phase 2 of our 2024 TCHC cybersecurity audits were not included in this year's follow-up cycle, but will be included in the future. We generally do not conduct follow-up work on recommendations until they are reported by management as fully implemented. For recommendations management has reported as fully implemented or no longer applicable, my staff review actions taken and do verification work, such as reviewing related supporting documentation and records, and they meet with management and staff. Once my office assesses a recommendation as fully implemented or no longer applicable, it is considered closed. After our review, we report the results of our follow-up, and this is the report before you today. After the TCHC BIFAC and board have considered this report, the report will be then transmitted by the TCHC board to the City Audit Committee and then to City Council. And given the relevance to TSHC, I will also be providing this report to the TSHC board at its July 31st meeting for information purposes. So moving on to this year's follow-up review. This report is a consolidated summary of the status of 33 prior recommendations issued by my office to TCHC, which came from 2 reports. First of all, our 2019 audit on TCHC revitalizations, which included 23 recommendations, 12 of which were previously closed in a follow-up we completed in 2021. And the second report is our 2021 report with lessons learned from the audit of contracted property management services, which had 10 recommendations. This is the first time we've included these recommendations in our follow-up process. Just to note that these are the only 2 Auditor General reports for TCHC with outstanding recommendations other than the recent 2024 cybersecurity audits. During our current follow-up cycle, TCHC management, together with the city, reported a further 12 recommendations as fully implemented, which include 9 out of the 11 remaining recommendations from the revitalization audit and 3 out of the 10 recommendations from the 2021 lessons learned audit. We assessed that 12 of these recommendations have been fully implemented and have highlighted some noteworthy results in our report. These achievements include leveraging TCHC revitalizations to address the city's affordable housing objectives. So since our 2019 audit, an additional 1,008 new affordable rental units were added to the plans for TCHC revitalization projects, although some funding commitments for these units and other required approvals are still pending. And strengthening the city's role in ongoing oversight and accountability over TCHC revitalizations. This is being done through new required approvals at defined stages of the revitalization projects, increased reporting on project progress, and improved transparency of TCHC development funding requirements through the city's annual budgeting process. As of the end of this follow-up cycle, 9 recommendations are not yet fully implemented and remain open. A list of these recommendations, together with management's action plans and estimated timelines for completion, are included in Exhibit 2 of our report. I would like to express my thanks and appreciation to staff and management of TCHC for their ongoing cooperation and willingness to take action to address these recommendations. Thank you very much, and back to you, Chair.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Questions from committee members, if any? Well, from my perspective, my review of the 2019 recommendations, the last 2 remaining, both on development partners and procurement, we've been very engaged in those and seen a lot of progress. And I think the due dates are later this end of this year. So I'm quite both confident and positive that those recommendations will come to fruition shortly. And then maybe over to management in terms of the 2021 recommendations, there's a number of them in progress. And certain due dates, I think, out until 2026, but maybe some commentary from your perspective, Sean, or team around those processes and recommendations.
Thanks very much. And through the chair, I'll make a couple comments and then pass it on to our operations team for further comment. But appreciation to the Auditor General's office for the follow-up. I can tell you from an executive perspective, it's quite helpful to have the follow-up on these and to provide assurance that we're meeting the requirements as have been laid out in the audit reports. Want to acknowledge that there's been some delay in accomplishing the recommendations set out in the 2021 audit. As you'll see in the appendix, we're now projecting that we'll have, I think, the majority of those met by early part of 2026, which is still, probably about a year or so away in accomplishing everything that's been recommended. But I want to provide the committee with my assurance that we've changed the way that we look at audit reports and other accountability officer reports. We have much more regular reporting and discussion up at our executive team and tracking of the progress of all of those activities, just to ensure that we're making meaningful progress and that we can bring back reports on that meaningful progress to our audit committee and to our board more frequently, perhaps, than what is currently brought back by the Auditor General, because they can only revisit us sort of every couple of years or so. So you got my commitment on that. And then I will just turn it over to our ops team for an update on the progress against some of the specific commitments.
Sure. So through the chair, so I do want to share with the committee that we do have, moving forward, an established leadership and structure around this work to ensure that we're moving these recommendations moving forward. Part of this will be addressed through a broader service delivery strategy that we're putting together. So when you think about service standards, establishing metrics to measure those standards, the way we monitor performance and escalate it through the vendor compliance office, all of that will be addressed over the next 8 to 12 months, and ensuring that most of these, if not all of these, will be completed by the set timelines that we've conveyed to the AG.
Very good. And I'll echo Sean's comments around we appreciate the feedback loop that this report and this work does, especially from a board perspective. Having that third-party validation around what's going on in the organization is super helpful. So thank you. Any other comments from committee members on this item?
Through the chair, Nick, I was just going to say thanks to Sean and John for adding the remarks on the reporting. That was really my only question of how do we as a board have better visibility, whether through BIFAC or at the board level, in terms of progress that's being made on these items. But Sean, you pretty much summed it up. So thank you for that.
Great. I'll ask for a motion. I believe it's to receive. Can I have a motion to receive, please? Thank you, Brian. All in favor? Thank you. Carried. We'll move to item 8, and I believe management has a presentation to kickstart things.
Thank you, Chair. As we're waiting for the EY team to get online, so this procurement update has 2 components. One is the procurement transformation project update, as well as that's for the BIFAC for information. And there is also a procurement policy element that will seek the BIFAC approval. As you recall, this is the phase 2 of the procurement modernization initiative, which we initiated about a year ago. EY team was engaged to do the implementation along with the management team. So this comprehensive project includes 5 work streams: strategy, governance, people and operating model, process, technology, and value creation, along with the proposed change management approach and communication plans. Significant progress has been made across various work streams, with dedicated staff ensuring deliverables are met and internal teams are aligned. Projects currently on budget and also on schedule. On the second element of the procurement policy, the document outlines Toronto Community Housing's initiative to update its procurement policy, last reviewed in 2012, involving collaboration with Macmillan, the external counsel, EY, and the stakeholder, both inside and outside organization, to ensure transparency, governance, and clarity in procurement processes, with approval sort of from BIFAC this morning to implement the revised policy. We encourage all divisions and vendor community to actively participate and share data to assist us achieve this transformation. Without further ado, I'm going to hand over to the EY team, the internal SPU team, to provide you with the highlights of the deck on what we have achieved, what's working well, and where support is needed, as well as the outlook planned for the next quarter of the project implementation.
Okay, can everyone hear me? Yep, perfect. Okay, thanks. So we're gonna get started until EY joins. So this is an update on the procurement transformation as well as the policy. Hopefully everyone can see my screen.
It doesn't seem to be updating as you move. So no, she's been moving for quite a while. Maybe exit the full screen. Just let's try again. You have to reshare now.
Sorry.
There you go.
All right. Hopefully everyone can see it now. So we're gonna get started. Procurement transformation project update. Hopefully can everyone see this? It's a little tiny. Sorry, I'm gonna try and make it bigger. So the procurement transformation is broken out into several work streams. We've been progressing quite well on all of them. Including the policy, which is going to be presented today. That's the first work stream that's completed. Their communication and change management plan has also been completed internally. We are working on finalizing performance metrics and the governance structure, including the org chart, which includes the state roles and responsibilities and the skills assessment. Also working on the vendor management process map and playbook, category management, procurement to pay, which is P2P. Training will be delivered right after we've completed all the processes and playbooks. So we're making good headway since we started in Q1. Lastly, it's going to be ensuring that we execute on certain opportunities to garner some savings, which are also progressing quite well in conjunction with other divisions within TCHC. Any questions on the slide deck before I go forward? Okay. So this is kind of the same, just the key accomplishments to date. I'm just going to move forward. Okay. Tess and Sid, are you on?
I'm on Hanan, yes.
Okay.
And
We are
is JG here as well.
I'm on as well. It's check sheet.
Okay.
So I kind of started. Do you want to continue from here, or do you want me to go back?
I can take it from here and speak to this slide.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so project updates. In terms of what's been working well, we have active engagement from within the SPU team. We have weekly touch points with the SPU team and EY to make sure everything is hitting the milestones of the project. Also, in terms of divisional participation, all the division workshops have been going well, and all the pain points are being discussed, and the divisions have been sharing the insights. In terms of where we need some support, there is a small delay in terms of obtaining data, the vendor usage data. For example, there's a delay there, so there's an impact to the overall timelines due to the data delays. And in terms of some other divisions where we are working with the divisions, but there have been some issues surrounding the perceived notion of value that EY and procurement can bring to the division via enhanced procurement. That has been an ongoing conversation, and we're hoping with greater executive support and leadership, these hurdles can be overcome as well shortly. Next steps in Q3, like Hanan mentioned, we are finalizing the key procurement performance metrics. This is something that most stakeholders are interested in, including procurement cycle time and the value that procurement brings in terms of cost savings. These are metrics that we will establish and monitor moving forward, as well as the org structure, including procurement staff's roles and responsibilities are being finalized, as well as 9 key contract opportunities where we are working with the divisions to identify an enhanced procurement strategy to take our work back to the market and hopefully get better value for money is being delivered in Q3 as well. So that was this slide. Can move forward.
Anything from EY, Jagjeet, to add before we go to the next one?
No, JG covered it. Thanks.
Yeah.
Okay, so now we're on to the procurement policy update. Lily, did you want to start?
Well, this is the progress update for the committee. Can we open the floor for the questions before we go to the next item? Because the policy piece is for approval.
I'd say just push through, like complete the presentation and then open it up and we vote.
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so on the procurement policy update, which has been attached in the package, the highlights are really strengthening the governance with clear approval thresholds, clarifying the difference between competition and non-compete, It's a one single document, source of truth kind of for all procurement related matters. It is a public facing document, so it is critically important that we include details that were perhaps not included previously, such as social procurement, explaining what value for money is, and also complying to regulatory requirements. So additional notable highlights include, as has been requested, vendor relationship management and the ability to use cooperative and buying groups, and also clarity on use of change orders. So it's a very high level slide deck. The procurement policy is 30 pages, around 30 pages or so with definitions and additions from the current 4-page document or 5-page document. This is quite an adjustment, but it just showcases TCHC's interest to walk the talk and be able to broadcast to others the actual work that's being done behind the scenes with procurement services and bringing transparency. So any questions before I go to the next slide?
Well, I guess just in terms of the policy, like, do you want questions now, or do you want them at the end of the presentation?
I'm on the last one, which essentially is next steps. So it's up to you.
Sure, I'm happy to jump in. So a couple of the highlights sort of noted include sort of value for money and social procurement as 2 areas of sort of increased focus and sort of extrapolation of details and so on. When I read value for money, and I guess this is a sort of clarifying question, when I read the value for money element, it sort of lists out a number of factors to consider, but doesn't prioritize or what have you. Is this sort of like when someone then runs a specific procurement, they pick from these elements of which ones to focus and prioritize on? Because at face, from my perspective, at least at face value, when I look at, it's a page 78 of the package for directors and page 7 of the, it's got, I don't know what letter the alphabet L is, but 12 different items and not weighted. So can you help me understand sort of like how does this help sort of define value for money, other than sort of a list of factors to consider? I don't know does my question make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair. So value for money is a collaborative effort between the business divisions and procurement category managers, in which they work on a particular project and decide what applies from that list to that project. Those listed items are trade treaty regulated broken items for reference. So they're intended to provide guidance as opposed to be restrictive. So I think what comes next is the procedures and protocols that attempt, and the playbook that EY is working on for each category, in which we design, I guess, a formal structure for how that category is meant to be taken to market, or then revamped later with economy changes or political changes, and so on. So I hope I addressed the question, but I think Macmillan and EY can jump in if they need to as well, if they're on.
Sure. Good morning. I'm happy to add to that, Chair. So the critically important thing on the value for money definition is that what we are signaling to the public and signaling to those who are developing RFP or other procurement documents for TCHC is that we are not making procurement decisions solely based on price. So low price is not necessarily the reason you're going to select a vendor, and providing guidance as to what is taken into account and might be taken into account and would be then clearly communicated to proponents in the actual procurement document. And suitability for intended use, fit for purpose, for example, may make a lot more sense as an important value criterion in a building project, in a development-focused context. Support and service may be more important in an IT context. And so you don't want to overweight or underweight any particular category in the policy itself, but we are providing that guidance that beyond price alone, there are a number of important factors that TCHC will value in selecting its preferred vendor as it goes through a procurement process. And so that's the reason we've not weighted any of them in the policy itself.
So then in a specific, and just so I'm clear on like process, so there's the policy, and then there's the specific procurement policy process for a specific item. Is there something in between, or is it basically those two things where then you're designing an RFP or whatever the specific, and then you're looking at this saying, well, according to our policy, we've got, 12 different factors here. Let's take three of these three are most relevant, and I'm going to weigh them, 50, 25, 25. And this is sort of the field of play for value for money. Is that a fair
That
sort of
is-
assessment?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, I can just build on what Timothy said. It's exactly correct. So once you have the policy, and then once you're developing the sourcing strategy itself, that's where you're looking at what are your objectives for this specific procurement, and you're designing the sourcing strategy, weightages, and evaluation criteria in alignment with that. So are you trying to get a low cost vendor? Are you trying to get that best quality? Or are you trying to balance these things? So you'd be looking at all those things together for the specific sourcing event. And that's what we're helping design from a process perspective. How do you go through that thought process for every strategic procurement event?
Okay, thank you. No, that's helpful. And then on social procurement, so when I read it, it says that this will be a priority. We'll prioritize contracts for social procurement, and just sort of like leaves it at that. Again, is that sort of a similar scenario where we're just sort of outlining our overarching goal with this policy, and then in each procurement, it'll specifically say how social procurement is relevant, not relevant, to what degree in the specific RFP?
Yes, thank you for the question, Chair. Yes, the answer is there's going to be a social procurement framework that will define, I guess, the governance in relation to procurement policy and how we proceed with particular engagements with social procurement vendors or tenant enterprises. So the answer is yes.
Okay. Yeah, and I guess in my mind, then this is really just sort of like the overarching direction, even, because it's not even really goals per se. It's more just the words we're going to use in the frameworks and the policy in the specific RFPs, because there's nothing sort of here sort of specifying level or specific categories or what have you. It's more just super high level. Is that a fair comment?
Yeah, so when we proceed with a particular RFP, social procurement will be a priority factor in every engagement. When we present the framework at BIFAC next, that will include granular detail on how that will progress, as opposed to the policy, which is at 100,000 foot level. Yes, so that's true.
We tend to be quite permissive.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's all I've got. Any other questions from committee members on the policy?
It's Brian. I just, I may have missed it. If it was, I apologize, but I'm just wondering how, because I assume the city has a very similar, or should have a similar policy, and I guess I'm just wondering how one decides if we can get benefit by partnering with the city for a variety of procurements where there's similarity across different city organizations, the city itself. So actually volumes are much larger, and therefore hopefully the savings would be. So I'm just wondering, how do you tie that into our process?
Thank you for the question, and through the chair, I'm going to defer to EY for the answer. Tess or Sid?
Okay, so yes, the city has parameters in most of their contracts that allow organizations, affiliates like TCHC to use their contracts. This is being addressed, I'd say, on a case-by-case basis as TCHC goes through their procurement. And so as the sourcing strategy is developed, if there are contracts in place at the city or with other GPOs for that matter, that may be more favorable based on volume, then that's being explored together with legal at TCHC to see if those can be leveraged. The city does allow for it. It's just a matter of making sure TCHC can allow for that in terms of their legal.
And perhaps I'll just
So it-
jump in to add that in Appendix A, Section 2.2, Brian, in this policy, it's a section that says buying organizations, cooperative procurement, and piggybacking. Piggybacking is the not terribly nuanced legal term that we use for what you've described. And so it specifically provides in the policy that where TCHC identifies a contract, provided that the way that contract's been entered into would comply with TCHC's trade agreement obligations so that you wouldn't create any legal problems for yourselves, you could piggyback onto that contract. So we've created express permission for that concept within the policy. And then as you go through an actual sourcing opportunity, again, one of the early stages you'd be required to do is assess, is there an existing contract out there? Is there an opportunity for us to work with others or piggyback on another contract for savings or efficiency or any other reasons that would still comply with our obligations?
Well, that in all the process is, one of the early questions would be, are there other city or city agencies that we would partner with or piggyback on? So that would be a question that would be a standard question as we're going through procurement policy.
That's right.
Through the chair, if I may add, there are a couple of elements in terms of aligning with the city's purchasing power. So our refreshed purchase policy actually, by and large, mirror the city's purchasing bylaw and also the procurement process policy. The alignment is there. In terms of leveraging the purchasing power with the city and also other city ABCs, the city, through their procurement management and also material management division, they have a collaborative working group, which we met with them on a regular basis to explore joint procurement, which is before we start the procurement process, we share information and then allowing TCHC to share our entity and also volume with before we go to the market. And then the second mechanism is a piggyback, Macmillan just mentioned. We are part of that as well. The third piece is also like the VORs. For example, through the city, we have our VOR roster, which we regularly leverage through, for example, our technology services for IT hardware, platform purchases, as well as the cybersecurity for the CSO services and why not. And then in addition to that, we also work very closely with other municipalities on a regular collaboration, including working through the municipality with, for example, provincial government with Supply Ontario. So on the leveraging the buying group as well as VOR, I can share with the committee in 2025, we achieve around close to $1 million through either cost avoidance or cost saving initiatives.
Thanks very much, Lily.
Through the chair, just a couple of follow-up questions and comments. Director Smith, you actually identically kind of read my mind and where I was going with this, just based on Chair McCrae's comments with respect to value for money. The way our policy reads before us seems to be very aligned with the City of Toronto in that we're utilizing a mix of quantitative and qualitative methods to address the assessment and find optimal balance for cost and non-financial factors. So I think that EY and Macmillan and management have confirmed that our alignment is towards the City of Toronto as our shareholder. And then my second comment or observation or question for the group is relating towards the efforts of this transformation project. And as we modernize capital planning processes, how is our procurement transformation work being embedded into vendor selection, accountability, and overall capital risk management? I trust that the further deliverables we'll get will probably be speaking to that more, but I thought I would raise that as a conversation now.
Thank you, Director Beatty, for that comment. In terms of vendor selection criteria, that's part of our vendor lifecycle management. Project work is still underway with EY. We do intend to provide a holistic and fulsome update to BIFAC in future committee meetings.
Thanks, Lily.
Go ahead, Dara.
There was just one aspect of the document that I wanted to make sure I highlighted for the committee, and that is If you turn to Schedule C, Appendix C of the document, page 111 of the committee meeting package, there is a schedule that outlines procurement approvals that are required in non-competitive procurements. And I just wanted to flag for the committee that for procurements that are the result of direct awards with a value of between $500,000 and $2.5 million, the policy effects have changed in our approach thus far that the procurement award committee would now have the authority to approve those awards. To this point in time, PAC, the procurement award committee, has only been able to approve competitive procurements. Just wanted to flag that as a change to our practice to make sure that that change was something that we highlighted with the committee.
And is this sufficient approval to enact that change?
The approval of the policy will then give rise to a need for us to go back and amend our PAC charter, and we'll bring that forward to the board once the policy is approved.
And the policy also outlines the criteria for a direct award as well.
That's correct.
Statement. Great. Where were we? Questions? Still questions, or is there anything else on the presentation? And I know there's a timeline, but when do we expect that?
Up until end of December, early Q1, 2026.
Look forward to seeing Q4.
Thanks.
Any other questions or comments on this item? Okay, motion to, I believe, approve? Motion to approve, please. Thank you, Brian. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Lots of work going into that one for sure, and really important. Are we on item 9? That's held? Okay, item 9. Vendor award, Dayforce Canada Limited, Human Capital Management Implementation Services. I believe that was held, so maybe we'll go to questions or comments from committee members, please.
I think it was me. I just was wanting to know, this is basically an HR process that we're looking at.
Through the chair. So yes, this is a full human capital management system. So it's our fulsome payroll, benefits, onboarding, as well as other HR modules that we're hoping to add as a result of this award.
My question is, how does this, I assume you probably have done it, but how does this fit in with our overall HR, or not HR, IT planning, I mean, integration with our other Yardi and other systems?
Our current environment has 3 technology elements. They're all really great products. What we're looking for with this moving forward procurement is actually to bring them all together into one. That's going to benefit us from a business workflow automation perspective. Currently, the integrations between the 3 systems are all swivel chair, where somebody is actually extracting information from one environment and putting it into another environment. So that does limit us right now. When we look at bringing them all together, we get that smooth transition. We get that potential where, as we're recruiting, the information can become available from a skills perspective that can then be leveraged from a learning management, performance management, streamlining the onboarding process, which is an element that was actually called out from the Auditor General for cybersecurity. There's some improvements that we can make there as well. So lots of opportunities.
And I assume it can be helpful in reporting back key success factors for the strat plan.
Through the chair, absolutely. We are hoping some of the annual.
And hear you.
Is that better?
Yes.
So we are absolutely looking to improve data availability and data quality and reducing the current manual and spreadsheet-based data collection methods that we have in place.
Thank you.
Any other questions on this item?
Thanks,
Go ahead.
through the chair. And picking up on Director Smith's data theme, once again. Barbara, I just wanted to ask a couple questions relating towards, I guess, the functionality and the expanded use of Dayforce. I know that many systems were evaluated in terms of meeting our needs, and I'm just curious to understand, will Dayforce support integrated analytics that connect workforce trends, capital, or operational resource planning? So meaning, will we be able to leverage this data in areas like facilities management and operations, for example, from a staffing point of view?
The human capital, sorry, when we looked at the human capital management, we looked at it as a holistic solution for what could we do all in one as much as possible? What was the opportunity there? In terms of dashboarding, yes, it has the enhanced analytics. It has additional services from an AI perspective, artificial intelligence. It has the ability, it has a lot of pre-configured out-of-the-box reports that are available. In terms of the functions, as we see with a lot of products, and we've had them in for a while, there's lots of opportunities to enhance from within the modules that we're using and looking at the bundles that we have licenses for where we could actually add on additional modules. I know that the team has actually been progressively every year investing in that, and those opportunities are definitely there. In terms of, I think you were asking around the headcount budgeting for and timesheet management for other more operational purposes. Yes, that was actually one of the main criteria evaluation that drove the selection of this product. This product, we saw how well it could consider the fact our employees work in multiple sites, how they have multiple assignments, how we have managers that have to manage like not just 10, like 20, 30 people. We need to be able to do that very quickly, look at their outliers in terms of vacation, overtime, things like that, and still be able to update their schedules all in one, which is really important time savings for having like the management workload that we have. So we're very excited about this selection.
I have another question. The challenges of transitioning to this system and the timing that you would need.
Through the chair. So the good news is that we have the system currently in place, and our focus will be on understanding the opportunities to leverage more of the features of the system and determine the enhancements and modules that we will procure over time. So the transition should be smooth and seamless generally, and is certainly very different than had we selected a new vendor.
Thank you.
Any other questions on this item? Okay, motion to approve, please. Thank you, Venetia. All in favor? Carried. Thank you very much. Which one? We'll move to item 10, State of Good Repair Program, Process Review Update. Welcome.
Through the chair, I would to do some opening remarks and hand it over to the GEI team to walk through the highlights of the presentation. TCHC engaged the GEI consultant to review its capital planning and SOGR delivery and develop
A lot of feedback is, just make sure everyone's mic's off.
is now better. To improve efficiency, value for money, funding alignment. The review assessed TCHC's maturity across governance planning, execution, and reporting functions. It found foundational strengths such as asset data, funding access, and staff capability, but also identify key challenges such as unclear SOGR goals, siloed roles, and a lack of life cycle-based planning and fragment data systems. The reporting outlines the 5 key focus areas and recommend a roadmap to strengthen SOGR governance, prioritize planned investments, stabilize conditions, and enable long-term capital effectiveness. A phased implementation plan is also recommended for short-term, mid-term, and long-term initiatives. Given the current 10-year building repairs capital investment plan will end in 2027, this report also intends to assess to build out the business cases for the next 10 to 15 years capital financing plan to continue to protect and preserve our aging housing stock. With that, I'm going to hand it over to the GI team to walk you through the presentation. With me is first is Andrea Clemencio, Vice President, and also James, the VP Infrastructure and Asset Management.
Thank you, Lily. Thank you for having us. Important project. We spent around the last almost year working on this, so we've got 20 minutes to talk about a year's worth of work. So we've probably got more slides than time, so we're going to get right into it and give you a quick overview. You did see the full report as well as the slide deck in the agenda items, so hopefully you've had a chance to have a little preview of that. And I'll hand over to Andrea just to walk us through some of the key highlights of our slide deck. Thanks.
Thank you. Really to build on what Lily had introduced with us, we were really hired to have a good look at the State of Good Repair Plan and its delivery, TCHC, and bring in our lens, our perspective from municipal asset management. We did a deep dive. We watched videos. We analyzed data. We did interviews. We spoke to some of the people around this table and are presenting our results, very high-level results today. Next slide, please. Just a quick baseline that we wanted to make sure that we're bringing to the table today. This concept is common in operations, in asset management, in capital planning, but it is the struggle with balancing levels of service and cost and risk. And that really is a fundamental that we brought into this project. With TCHC, we were coming in expecting to see, this is what we call a State of Good Repair Plan. These bullets kind of highlight generally what you would want to see published and followed in organizations such as yours that takes into account these 3 things. Somehow, somewhere, levels of service are defined, the cost to deliver those levels of service are defined, and the risks that are incurred or being managed are also laid out. Next slide, please. FCI is a big part of what we talk about through the report, and we wanted to add this note. You'll probably, if you've seen the report or in our in the meeting notes, the agenda package, FCI on its own can be not telling enough information, and I think that's what we heard loud and clear from a lot of people in our interviews. This graph is just to show how reporting an overall portfolio average of an FCI of 13%, 10%, whatever your target is, can be misleading. The red bars show a portfolio that has an average of 13%, but you can see the distribution of that facility condition index. You've got some buildings that are in very poor shape at the top end of the graph, balanced by the buildings that are in great shape at the bottom end of the graph. Conversely, the blue is a different portfolio, just a mock example, also with a 13% average, but the buildings are in generally pretty good shape. So on its own, FCI doesn't tell enough of the story. We wanted to give a little bit of a background in that as we go into the presentation. Next slide, please. Levels of service, like I had noted, are really the backbone, and we were looking to see those really clearly defined. They are through and through all the documentation, but again, pulling it into a state of good repair plan right off the bat in the introductory page is what we were missing. So what are those services that you're providing to the community and why? Because that forms your investment needs, your priority needs, and your capital plan going forward. So in terms of what we were able to derive, state of good repair is one of your levels of service, maintaining those buildings in a state of good repair, but also keeping units and buildings open, as well as the energy and accessibility targets that were laid out, and as well the Tenants First initiative. Although they seem straightforward, through our work, we found that there sometimes ends up being some competition for funds because these levels of service all apply and are all priority. Next slide. We did a SWOT, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. We, like all good consultants, want to start off with the good news and tell you the great things that you truly are doing. We do a lot of this work in a lot of municipalities and with a lot of corporations. And we want to make sure we're bringing to the focus that you do some things really well. We also use those when we're building recommendations. So set you up for success by trying to use some of these strengths when we're talking about your implementation plan. Similarly, there are some opportunities, and these are meant to be external opportunities, things that are on the horizon that you might be able to hitch your caboose on, to do more collaboration, to partner, to share, to network. We had some great conversations with Ottawa and BC Housing, who are all on board to continue collaborating. And as well, there's some opportunities even within the City of Toronto, particularly in the corporate real estate division, because the asset management work they're doing is very much in parallel, and they are going through the same learning curve of trying to get their data and their forward planning and their levels of service and risks, all these things kind of laid out. Next slide, please. Lastly is the threats, and we wanted to make sure we're mentioning these. These are external pressures that are very much being brought internal and are affecting what we're seeing in that state of good repair planning. They're broken out in more detail in the report, but we wanted to make sure that we captured them. Next slide, please. The biggest part of the report is about the weaknesses. I don't like that term, but that's how the SWOT anagram works. We wanted to make sure we're going into detail in the report. This is just a very high level summary, but I think most importantly, the overall plan with those expectations of the elements that we were looking to see weren't in place. You're doing the work, you're executing on a plan that really isn't documented in full. So your strengths that we talked about, being able to execute capital very well, you spend money well, and you spend it according to the plans, and it's what we were finding is missing is that overall strategy, and then down to the detailed connection, like you had mentioned earlier, value for money. How is that money that you're spending buying you, let's say, FCI or condition improvements, and what overall life cycle goals are you striving to meet, and when will you get there? We also found some challenges with role clarity and accountabilities for state of good repair. A lot of that has already been overcome since James said this was a year-long project. A lot has changed in a year since we started for the better. We've seen so much improvement, and it was challenging to capture that, but we wanted to make sure you're aware that there's already been some tremendous improvement for role clarity, silos, and so on. Data is strong. Your asset management or your asset data is relatively strong compared to many other clients we work with. It's making sure that the right people can access that data and make decisions based on that data seamlessly without having 20 clicks or 20 people in between that have to generate reports. Some cultural issues like we had mentioned, but those are already being worked on. And second last bullet there, this isn't new news. That's what we were coming across, that the internal audit reports captured a lot of what we were stumbling across. There was some breakdown in terms of communicating how to move forward and take those internal audit findings and get some traction and make some improvement. Next slide, please. We did a maturity framework so that you can take this going forward. There's a table behind this that gives TCHC and the team the ability to regularly check in on what their maturity is on all these different elements for governance, planning, execution, and monitoring related to state of good repair planning. The good news is that you're basically in a straight line. That's great to not have those stars scattered everywhere. You're generally equivalent across that developing line, and then it's up to TCHC to do some research or some soul searching there to decide, where do you want to be? Do you want to move up to established? Do you want to be leading practice? And what does that look like? Next slide. The recommendations. So there are 19. We grouped them into categories based on what they kind of pertain to. Overall, we're looking to make recommendations to begin with in strategy, starting from setting those goals, that oversight forward, moving through to documenting that state of good repair plan, what that actually looks like and the elements included, maintaining that plan. Some improvements in project delivery, some improvements in that data connectivity and integration, and finally, some recommendations in culture, collaboration, communication, getting the dots to connect. And then we can actually go to the next slide. That's some of the details behind the recommendations, but we can handle those in questions if you'd like. So the implementation plan is really taking all of that, putting it into a big funnel with your strengths, with consideration of what you should start because it's foundational to everything else, or what are some quick, easy wins? What are the big efforts with low benefits or low outputs? We try to churn all that into a plan that is realistic. Although I know sometimes it's hard to gauge how much work can be done on a corporation as large as yours. But we tried to organize them into immediate, kind of short-term, get these things started in the next year to 2 years. And then there's some more medium-term things, and then some longer-term that might pause on initiation until you've got some momentum with the first few years. So in terms of the short term, what we're looking at, suggesting you start in the next few years, would be really that plan. That is the overall documented plan, building on what you already do, the great work that is already done by default, but writing it down. What are the strategies? What are the processes or SOPs have been started? And then how that all connects, making sure it's a document that you could print and see. The capital plan, that 10-year capital plan, is the output of this state of good repair plan. That's one piece of it. This would be the words behind it. We're looking to make recommendations around maybe reframing that FCI target. I know there's been some recent conversations about that, but also, as in number 6, pairing it with more a suite of metrics that would be able to tell this committee and the board and ELT regularly how things are and how you're making improvements. And as well, we've got some recommendations regarding the budget. It could be just in terms of the forward facing, how the budget is packaged. We wouldn't recommend an overhaul of your financial system, but rather how those budget lines are packaged and communicated. And probably most significantly, we're suggesting, if possible, perhaps a reserve be set up for the demand spending rather than having planning and demand spending combined. And this way your planning spend is protected, if you will. You spend the money toward your state of good repair program. If the demand spikes, then a reserve potentially after a few years could be built up to take some of that overflow rather than carving into your plan spend. Next slide, please. Lastly, we included a section at the end of the report about your coming challenge of building your business case for the next round of potential next round of funding, and our suggestions on really the messaging behind that. It's maybe asking or communicating that your financial capital needs can be grounded more in stabilizing the portfolio you have rather than improving. And it's a small difference in verbs, but we thought this really does capture the reality of the current condition of the buildings, what you can realistically achieve with the capital that you have at hand, while you're also meeting energy accessibility and open unit targets. And that way it's very much more realistic to say, let's stabilize where we are and build the business case around that state of good repair long-term investment. Last slide, next steps really are, we've got that final report in your hands, and we're hoping that that would give the team enough information to get started with cherry picking from that implementation and getting moving towards improvements, but also starting to use some of those suggested metrics and reporting back their progress often. Thank you.
Thank you. Maybe Sean or Noah, anything to add to that before we open it up to questions or discussion?
Yeah, thanks to the GEI team. Really appreciate the work that you've done. And I know that there's been I just want to say to our FM, our facilities management team, I know that the function itself has been under a significant amount of scrutiny, both internally and externally within the organization, and for good reason, right? We are stewards of a significant investment that's being made into the maintenance of people's homes, and we want to make sure that that's being invested appropriately. My big takeaway from all of this analysis is quite simple, right? It's that we are investing in a level that is always requiring us to catch up, always requiring us to invest in those things that are, becoming, if not already, emergencies within our portfolio. And I think what the report does is it challenges us to think a little bit differently about how can we optimize the way we go about this so that we're getting the best possible output and life cycle of all of our assets. So I was encouraged to see sort of the thoughts about where we're doing well, but also very helpful to understand where we can come up with a more appropriate strategy to guide our investments going forward to make sure we're getting the best value out of what we're putting into it. But I'll ask Noah to comment as well.
Thank you so much, Sean. I think you captured it really well. I do want to express an appreciation for GEI, not just in the takeaways from the report, but the report also suggests a deep understanding of our work and a very thoughtful package that they've put together here. And it's complex material, so I give them a lot of credit for what they've put together here. And, from the facility management side, we are extremely excited to dig into this and evolve into this next state of good repair investment plan, look at advanced metrics. And the group has identified it well. There is no shortage of data here to work from. And it's making that connection between data and reporting and what we do with it, and also just better connection of a plan to the processes and the work we do. So it's an exciting read. It does a very good job, in my opinion, of laying out the foundation for a plan for a plan. And we're very excited to dig in and very grateful. Thanks.
Thank you. And I'll echo some of those comments. I thought the report was well done. It's sort of a nice reference document now going forward in terms of some of the underlying sort of focus areas. And from my perspective, it also sort of articulated well. On the positive side, there's a lot of work being done across the portfolio every day by the team across, again, 2,000 plus buildings that are fundamentally very old and depreciating very quickly given their age. However, there's a huge opportunity to do it in a much more strategic way. And it's everything from the reporting, the KPIs, the prioritization, and the value for money element beyond just getting the work done. And I think that's sort of like, it was sort of framed relatively well, I think, in the sense that it's a maturity element and an evolution of getting the work done is the first priority, but then getting the work done more efficiently, higher impact, sort of being able to sort of really articulate that and then thus hopefully then enable more work to be done over time. So I, from my perspective, a lot of good work, and it's sort of a relatively clear roadmap now of what needs to be done. And my first question is, it strikes me mission number one now is having the internal SOGR plan, strategy, whatever roadmap, whatever words we want to use, up and running as quickly as possible. Like what does that look like time wise to sort of put that in place? Like, and understanding it's a big complex thing, but I also think we don't have to boil the ocean and have every detail. Let's have something that we can start working with and evolve and iterate over time. But maybe Noah, I'll put you on the spot first. What does that look like in terms of timelines, and what can we expect next in that regard?
Well, we don't have much time, truthfully, right? We have our current investment plan coming to an end at the end of 2027, and there's a pressing need to secure that next tranche of funding that is going to continue to preserve and modernize Canada's, largest reservoir of vital community housing. So we're meeting this afternoon with our third-party consultant who does the work on the FCI to immediately start digging in. And we want to answer some questions very quickly. And it's about like, where are we with the portfolio? And it involves looking at FCI and making sure that the data is in line with some of the reporting that's been happening, some of the truth on the ground. And the group, GEI, does a good job of sort of describing FCI as a particular lens, and you have to dig in and get into it. So the first thing is to really look at the portfolio very quickly in some of these deeper KPI, lenses, to start identifying where we can focus, where we get that value for money, what's at stake, where are the critical units, what are some of the strategies we can take, and breaking the portfolio up into those typologies of approaches, right? We have a vast majority of our tenant body that lives in a particular typology, right? Like that's not necessarily the most amount that we have by building typology. So there's some clues there about where we should be focusing that value. We also want to take a look back. We want to look about how we've done project selection. The ship hasn't sailed to self-evaluate again deeply about our project selection, and taking a look and validating that we have been selecting critical projects that provide value, projects that keep units open. And out of those two things, I think emerge some strategies for focus. And we start to take that into the next phase, which is sort of a costing piece and looking at the things you get and marrying that with other issues like accessibility and energy performance, which are things that are not going away and which things are related to the sustainability of our portfolio and the comfort of our tenants, and also a fiduciary piece and a financial kind of market piece about how we serve as a corporation financially. And then I think that the third phase of that is melding that with an intergovernmental approach and marrying that with where we see, the three levels of government wanting to put money and framing housing, community housing as an infrastructure and a public asset that needs investment. So it's sort of a three-phase piece. And we're starting as early as this afternoon to dig in and start to look at some of those deeper KPI. And as I said, it's exciting. We're excited. The data is there, and we're excited to dig in.
No, I appreciate the sense of urgency, and I think sort of one of the first follow-ups will be sort of like what does that work plan look like timing wise from management? I sort of refer to page 151 of the package where the implementation plan, the short term being under 3 years to establish a formal, transparent plan. Our expectation is maybe 3 months, but I'll leave it to you to come back. But certainly this is a real sense of urgency from I think from the board's perspective, but certainly my personal perspective, like the quality of the buildings that we provide housing to people is of the utmost importance. And so this is our investment and execution of that. And so this is of the utmost importance. Maybe with that, committee members, questions, comments, I see both hands up. Venetia, why don't you take the lead here?
Thanks, Nick. I think we're very aligned in the reality that when, as a corporation, when we spend on a consulting report, the hope is that the results are going to live on the shelf. And Noah, you shared really eloquently how even today you're going to be tearing into the results of this package. I know it's sat with the management team for some time already, but really to understand how we can formulate from recommendation into action. And I guess to build on that, assuming GEI's mandate is now complete, maybe thinking forward in your meetings later today, Noah, or as Chair McCray mentioned, BIFAC's cadence of meetings, we'd like to at least make sure that we're keeping this top of mind and on track for implementation. And in a perfect world, we'd be testing and learning alongside our next, budget cycle, and that may or may not be realistic based on where we sit today and how much work there is to go. So I guess my question to you, Noah, is, and Lily, would you consider the mandate with GEI completed, or will we still be leaning on them to address any further KPIs that can help guide this work along and support FM on the evolution?
I think through the chair, I think if I understand the question, and thank you for the kind words as well, and the wisdom there, but AI is important. It's an industry standard. It tells you a certain, it gives you a certain altitude of look at your portfolio. But the report does a good job of identifying. It doesn't necessarily tell you where to spend the money, right? It tells you how you're doing in general. It doesn't tell you that, and they gave those two examples, that there might be a set of buildings that are vital in terms of unit count that are on the verge of turning critical. There's all kinds of places where we can pull things out. What does the FCI look like if you take out some of the interior pieces and you just look at critical systems? What happens if you look at a set of buildings that are set to turn critical in the next 3 years, and what can be done in terms of value intervention at that point? It gives you those things, but there are deeper places too. I think we need to look at building typologies too, and how we can efficiently address types of buildings. And this goes to our procurement discussion earlier this morning as well. Are there ways of leveraging TCHC, which in many ways is could be a market to itself, to try to leverage some of those pieces? So I don't know if that answers the question about FCI, but it's sort of how the industry speaks, but we need to go deeper, and we have a lot of data. Every one of our buildings broken down into constituent parts and reported on. We have a lot there to mine and test.
And just to put a fine point on it, the FCI, the aggregate average FCI has been the benchmark for whatever, as long as I've been here, but a long time. And that's just not good enough, right? The average hides the disparity. And, I think I can speak for everyone. We care less about the good buildings getting to great buildings and more about the critical, underfunded, at risk safety issue buildings, much more than the good to great buildings trying to go to good. So how do we make sure we're seeing that visibility, that prioritization, health and life safety first and foremost?
Thanks, Nick. And I don't know how this was misinterpreted as focus on FCI. I'm focused on SOGR. Coming from an engineering background, yeah, I very much sit on the opposite end of the scale of whether over-reliance on a weighted average for FCI is really going to be enabling us to do our work. In fact, as a risk management professional, reliability-centered maintenance is going to check, I'd say, 3/4 of the boxes we need to with respect to our obligations as a public sector housing provider. But what I did hear, Noah, is you're considering the other inputs of data. What I am curious to understand is, do we need continued intervention to form a draft strategy, or is it too early to even tell? You need to address looking at this report with your team to at least provide a plan of action for next steps.
I think there's enough what I think this report does very well is it provides that roadmap to create a plan and a timeline. And I think that's what the chair is asking for too. What is that process? And this gives some very specific actions around that and identify some opportunities and some weaknesses and gaps as well that can be addressed in short term. And as Andrea had put it, some of these have already been addressed in many ways. But we have a number of instruments coming our way. We have another AG audit on our planning and delivery process. I think that 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 needs to kind of tap into this. We have our annual FCI report that I think we need to see where we're at. But to me, we need to move to create this plan and dig into those things right away in tandem with these things being complete. One of the things Andrea mentioned is there's not a ton of novel kind of realizations here. We know about a lot of this stuff, and I don't think we have the luxury to kind of wait till we have everything in place to act. And we have a lot of internal expertise, and we're building a lot of internal expertise around this as well.
So in terms of I think the question though, specifically, will GEI play a role in this going forward? This be more now in internal management hands to take the ball and run?
I think I'll just say generally, I think having consultant teams like GEI and others who help us around us as we move forward in some capacity is a good idea. I think just understanding that scope but I think like the stewardship of this type of expenditure and the importance of this portfolio requires, outside checks and balances at all times.
If I may add through the chair. So we will be assembling a project team internally. To answer your question specifically, GI's engagement is complete as a part of this work. But having said all that, we may consult them as we go through our implementation phase. The second piece is really want to highlight the work we have done, even since during the duration of this 1-year engagement. For example, we have documented our SOPs. And in terms of the current state of the repair plan, we want to really look at the life cycle management, right? So we are doing all the pieces of the work. For example, preventive maintenance, demand maintenance, and to the point of the plant maintenance that we're contributing to the FCI, as well as other metrics currently being required to report back to our funders, whether through the city or even the CMHC. Like accessibility, energy efficiency, and all those metrics we will continue to track and report back. And then the other piece I really want to highlight as well is also the prioritization framework. So it's being a request from the BIFAC board, and we have started some internal work already, and some of the pieces have already been implemented. In terms of a timeline, so we do plan to, I'm looking at Noah, I would say report back to the committee about on a annual basis as we undertake this project implementation. This is critical to the work we do. And then the other element I also want to add is also the budget piece, right? We have started our 2026 budget cycle, so we will be doing a more holistic review of our backlog. So in the report, GI really honed in on the unconstrained needs of our backlog. In the past, we were sort of constrained by the funding available to do the work. And then with this report, really outlining the challenges of our housing stock, we will be doing some asset data and also financial modeling on the cost estimate to have that holistic picture in front of the city, and also will serve as a baseline for our future funding advocacy.
Thank you. Brian, I think you got your hand up.
Yes, it's a huge task, both FCI and state of good repair, but I guess I wanted to make sure from a tenant perspective and criteria that we evaluate also the safety and security and bring that into one of the criteria for assessing which projects, because that's an area where, we also need to be focused on as well, Noah. So I just hope that aspect, we've got lots of work, I'm sure, to do, but when we're looking at that, what projects are necessary to improve the, from a tenant perspective, safety and security?
If I may, through the chair, yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think that a couple of areas we've discussed internally in terms of how we look at both our state of good repair work as well as our development work don't always take into account things like safety and security investments and how those fit kind of within the broader economic picture, or they're looked at differently, essentially, right? They're not looked at in the same sort of way of sort of increasing the longevity of an asset, for example. And then the other side, on the development side, you could say the same thing about community development opportunities, right? Where are there greater opportunities to provide greater development of a particular neighborhood, and how can that generate a return to us that's perhaps different from just looking at the revenues and costs of a particular development or investment. So we very much share those thoughts and concerns, and we're looking at specific strategies to address them. I can give you an example. Noah and I have been talking recently about 2026 budget planning. And one of the things we're contemplating is actually carving out a dedicated fund for investments in safety and security investments within particular high-risk communities, and to pull those out of our state of good repair budget so that we have a separate pool of funds that's justified separately through our steady budgeting process. And then you have a dedicated investment that you're making in addressing outstanding safety improvements within particular neighborhoods that have perhaps been outstanding for a number of years, right? So I think the important thing is to get it off the books of state of good repair, because you'll never really justify it through those mechanisms. You have to do it through a different justification. So we're committed to that.
Thank you.
I think you can tell this committee is very focused on this topic. We appreciate all the hard work done, lots more to go. But after, as Sean, you said, a few years of more focus and scrutiny, this is, I think, a very positive development and momentum on where we want to go as an organization. So thank you, and sort of the end of the beginning, maybe. With that, I'll ask for a motion to receive. It's always 50-50. Thank you, Anisha. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Thank you very much for joining us today. Let's move to 11A, Regent Park Phases 1 to 5 revitalization update. I believe this item was held for questions or comments. I have no idea who it was, but if we could just go to that, that'd be great. Oh, right. Venetia, I think that was you, right? And let's take your in-camera question as it is a good one and bring it to the public domain. Thank you.
Bear with me, I just have to find it. Is Peter Zimmerman still there, or is Eve's gonna answer?
We got him.
I'm here.
Oh, sweet.
Locked him in.
Should we re-ask the question?
Yeah, we'll re-ask the question. I think I cut it off.
Just bear with me for 1 second. It was, so related to this action item in the reports provided, the question was just regarding the lessons learned from the previous phases of work, whether, Peter, you could shed some light on how they've been taken into consideration for this last phase that we're about to begin.
Thank you for the question. So through the chair, I've asked William Mendez to join me because when we're talking about revitalization, it's not just a physical transformation of our communities. It's a social transformation of our communities. So I'm going to speak a little bit about what we've learned in terms of our building and design and how phases 4 and 5 in Regent Park will be different, an evolution of what we've done in the past. And I'm going to ask Will to speak a little bit about the social transformation and what we've learned in Regent Park over the last number of years and how that aspect of our work has evolved and I would say improved as well. So as we get ready to embark on the final 2 phases of Regent Park and hopefully begin construction on Building 4A later this year, the building really represents our collective learning over the last number of years and all of our revitalization projects, and from very fine-grained details around, for instance, how we design our suites, how we address the concerns of our path committee, how we build our amenity spaces in our buildings. Every every building is an opportunity to learn, and every building is an opportunity to hear from tenants who either love it or are frustrated with some of the things that we've done in the past. So the 4A building, the amenity spaces are going to be bigger, better, different. One of the things we've heard from our tenants is things like opportunities for community gardens are super important. They're always oversubscribed, so there will be an abundance of rooftop gardens in the 4A building. The suites that we're building, particularly the larger ones, the 4 and 5 bedroom units, they're really challenging to build in an apartment building form. So the whole layout of the building is designed really to accommodate great 4 and 5 bedroom units, and particularly in the tower that's a part of the development. Outdoor amenity spaces as well. One of the things that we learned from the earlier phases is that it's better for us to be able to control the public outdoor spaces rather than perhaps turn it over to the city for management. So those spaces in phases 4 and 5 will either be managed by Toronto Community Housing or the future condominium corporations in the areas that are going to be slated for market development. So I think that's a kind of a bit of a sense of the physical transformation. I'm going to turn it over to Will to talk a little bit about what we've learned on the social transformation and some of the items that are contained in the report related to particularly around the issue of community benefits. So Will?
Thank you. And through the chair, we've learned a lot over the years in Regent Park and also over the past 10 years of doing revitalization work in other sites as it relates to community economic development. In Regent Park phases 4 and 5, we've done two things. One is there is an employment target, what needs to will be held accountable to reach that target, but there's also the allocation of cash investments. And those cash investments will help secure opportunities such as scholarships, training opportunities for tenants, business development, and cash invested in spaces to advance the community's ability to provide opportunities such as programming or have more influence over the spaces that are designated for community use. And as it relates to the update in the report itself, we've taken a different approach in Regent Park where we are building on lessons learned in Alex Park, where we've gone to the community to help them determine how money is allocated in those cash investments for those areas. And that's proven to really ensure that we're making the decisions based on community priorities as opposed to doing a desktop exercise. We're involving tenants throughout the process, and we feel that is a highly impactful approach to take. And we're also involving community in the determination of space activations. Like there's a lot of money being invested in community spaces, but we want to ensure that they're animated. We don't want empty buildings or empty rooms. We want tenants and community agencies and others to be able to animate those spaces and provide programs and services for other tenants in our buildings.
Thank you.
I have a question. Does anyone else have a question? But I'm happy to go last. Brian or any other question? No, good. There's obviously sort of a joint venture element with Tridel on a bunch of these sort of interrelated phases and lands. Given the overall nature of the condo market in Toronto being dead, how much does that impact our timing and interdependency of the phases as it relates to sort of the Tridel nature of the relationship?
Thank you, Chair. In the report that we presented today to BIFAC, we do highlight that we will be reporting back in the first part of 2026 with a revisiting of the anchor business plan. We have not done it in this report because the financing for our first building, the 4A building, is secure. We appear to be on budget. We think that there are going to be changes. We think we are going to have to revisit certain aspects of the anchor business plan. We haven't fully processed the impact of tariffs. No one knows how tariffs are going to affect the future development costs related to our projects. So it's our intention to work through the remaining portion of 2025 and come back in early 2026 with a full financial update. Our activities between now and then will not be impacted. We have the budget approved in place for the work that we're going to carry out between now and that first quarter of 2026. So we'll be working on an evaluation of what are those impacts, how it's going to change the anchor business plan, and what strategies we might employ to maintain the momentum of revitalization, even if the timing of revenues from our market partnerships may be affected by the changes in the marketplace.
No, definitely appreciate there's lots of moving pieces and understood loud and clear on coming back early next year. And hopefully we'll also continue to see declining costs as part of that as well. That's all I've got. Any other questions on this item? Oh, Brian, looks like your hand's up.
Speaker.
I think.
Sorry. Yeah, just going back to trying to look at the supports and services that are needed in the community. There are a number of organizations, good organizations in the area, Dixon Hall, Central Neighborhood House, CRC, the Health Center. I just wondered, is there initiative to pull them together for future planning so that everybody's struggling with budgets, but you want to maximize the ability to provide services to the community and the new community that will be occurring there. And I just wondered what initiatives we might have in terms of pulling those organizations, and there's probably others as well, together that serve that community right now in trying to develop a more coordinated plan and maximizing the supports and services to the tenants that are going to be living there.
That is ongoing work so we are actively engaged with a number of agencies in different parts of the organization, are working with agencies in Regent Park to secure use of space agreements, to assist grassroots groups in regions that are tenant-led, to support them as well. There's also funding and coordination with the City of Toronto through their social development division to ensure that there's funding coordination that are going to the agencies and grassroots groups to then increase the service level and opportunities provided by those specific agencies. I'm happy to actually anecdotally report that we are working in collaboration with almost all of the agencies in Regent Park that are serving Regent Park. So they are anchored in the community and they are supporting the community in terms of increasing that service level as we determine gaps or vulnerabilities. Staff are proactive or reacting very quickly to engage with the agencies on an as-needed basis to amend or pivot their services to address those vulnerabilities and gaps.
I know, having worked in the industry, there's always a certain amount of competition between agencies, and I just think if somehow we can pull them together, we can sort of maximize the impact they have rather than it being a competitive process, more a collaborative one where we can get the most for our tenants possible.
Thank you for the question. I totally agree. There are several agency tables that are active in Regent Park that support service coordination, and they're aligned with pillars in accordance with youth engagement, community safety, and economic development. And there's also other working groups that are a part of the social development plan table that are focused on community building and and other areas where there's agencies that are coming together, meeting together and meeting with tenants and staff from the city to enact programs and services.
Thank you.
It looks like Venetia, you have a follow-up question?
Yeah, just a comment to add to Brian's remark. I know recently in doing some work with UHN in the west end of the city, they had brought in community partners that were embedded in TCHC West End residences, specifically focused around an elderly community. And I know in the early days of Regent Park, we had the birthing center, we had healthcare facilities that were aligned with the community planning that was really helpful to kind of anchor it more to be a destination. And I'm sure that Peter and William, you've already thought of these things and they're likely on the go, but Brian's comment reminded me of that because supportive seems to be in the dialogue in the public sphere these days. And while we're not a supportive housing provider, having the community amenities are beneficial for our tenants.
Okay. With that, look for a motion to receive. Thank you, Brian. All in favor? Carried. Thank you very much. We'll move to 11B, Allenbury Gardens Revitalization Closeout Report, and hand it off to the development team, as I believe we have a small presentation in that regard.
Good morning, Chair and Committee. Today we're here to present the Allenbury Revive Project Closeout Report. The project started in 2009, was envisioned as a mixed income, mixed tenure community with brand new TCHC building and facility and an initiative which secure additional revenue streams for Toronto community housing. Over the years, this project has touched on and requires support from almost all aspects of Toronto community housing various divisions. So a big thank you to everyone. We're excited to be here to be able to bring this project forward as a closeout report for the BIFAC and board. With us here today, we got Michael Lam, Senior Development Director, as well as Marissa Vela, Senior Development Manager, who work very closely on the Allenbury Garden. Over to you, Michael.
Good morning, Chair, Committee. Very, very happy to be here today with my colleagues. Marissa Vela is invisible right now, but controlling the PowerPoint. So hi, Marissa. So as Eve has pointed out, this is a project that began in 2009. We are pretty excited to bring this closeout report to actually present this neighborhood. Allenbury Gardens is located just west of Highway 404, just north of Fairview Mall. Total site area is approximately 7 acres. The development partner for this site is Fram plus Slocker. The overall revitalization involved the demolition of 127 existing RGI rental townhouse units and replacing them with 133 RGI units. The difference between the two numbers there is because we actually added 6 units from the Leslie Nymark revitalization, which, well, due to architectural layout and site conditions, didn't really fit on that site. Of these units, 75 are located in a 10-story new apartment building, and 58 units are in new townhouses. In addition to the RGI replacement housing, the revitalization included the introduction of 1,017 units of market condo housing spread across 4 buildings and 2 townhouse blocks. The photo that we see in front of us is of the 10-story TCHC apartment building to the foreground, and in the background, one of the market condos. Next slide, please. This is a revitalization schedule. This is the timeline that we followed. We started up in 2009. there was actually a fantastic amount of interest in this project from prospective partners. And we had gotten board approval for proceeding with the project in 2010 and with FRAM. 2013, we had approval of the Anchor Business Plan, and we started construction in 2015. Construction completed in phase 1 on 2017, and we started moving folks in. 2018, we started construction on phase 2, and that lasted all the way until 2023 because it was done in 2 sub-phases. We expect that there are going to be some tail end CED fulfillments, final profit distributions, warranty, et cetera, that does take a little bit of time to close out. We had a fantastic amount of community engagement in this project, very numerous engagement sessions, working on everything from massing to coming up with revitalization guiding principles. This is something that, next slide, please. If we develop with the community early on, it really feels like that there is a engagement and a agency that the community feels and an identification with the finished product. Next slide. Pre-revite, post-revite, bit of a difference in density. We have 17 to 20 stories. Obviously, if we were to start today, these would be much higher, but it is actually a very lovely scale for the neighborhood. Next slide. We see the breakdown. We've got on the left-hand side of the slide, we've got phase 1, 2 condominium apartment buildings, a bunch of TCHC replacement buildings, and then in phase 2, we have to the right of the central public park that was handed over as part of this project. Phase 2 involved our TCHC building and 2 condominium apartment buildings, as well as some townhouses. Next slide. This is some imagery of the outdoor spaces. In addition to the public park, we also included some POPs, is what we, the acronym that we use, a privately owned public space. And these are on top of the parking structures that are underground and operated by the condominium, but free for all of our tenants to use as well. Next. Some of the image of the market buildings. Lovely buildings all. Next slide. These are some of the images of our replacement townhouses, and at the top center, our replacement TCHC tower at 10 stories. Next slide. I'm going to hand this over to my colleague William, who can talk a little bit more about our CED efforts on this project.
So we were able to secure community development investments from FRAM as we secured that agreement in 2000 and I believe 12. It included a $70,000 cash investment for scholarships, a contribution towards an on-site employment coordinator to support tenants to access training and job opportunities. And over the course of the years, FRAM has supported, in addition to their commitments, $10,000 in cash towards community events to bring the community back together because everyone was living off-site, and to help maintain that social fabric, contributed to community events and food security initiatives, as well as like back-to-school programs to help the community throughout the transition period. Next slide, please. In addition, the FRAM produced very well in achieving its commitment to community economic development employment targets. they were able to employ 30, they were able to support 35 tenants to access jobs. 30, they were able to make 35 jobs available for tenants that tenants secured. Out of the 35 jobs, 24 tenants were employed, and 8 of those 24 tenants secured long-term employment, mainly in the construction industry. Out of the 35 jobs that were created, 30 jobs were in construction and 5 jobs were either professional, administrative, or technical. In this slide over here, we have some statistics as to the wages earned by tenants, as well as the job count of net new jobs that were created and secured by tenants over the course of the revitalization period.
Just a note on the jobs that were secured. FRAM actually is incredibly happy to report that 2 of the construction jobs that were found through this program are not only they're still gainfully employed, but they're gainfully employed by FRAM as senior site superintendents, which is actually an incredible career. Both were tenants. I think still are maybe, one from Allenbury itself and one from another of our neighborhoods. So that concludes our presentation. Very, very happy to take any questions. Certainly happy to talk about lessons learned. A quick note about that. As Peter and William talked about earlier, we take the iterative nature of our revitalization projects and maximize really as much as we can our learnings and benefits. In the report, we talk about 10 both major and minor tweaks and really the beginnings of policies going forward that we are very much excited to share with the rest of our colleagues and really drive the quality of our projects going forward as we look into the future. But happy to take questions.
Thank you very much. And I always personally appreciate these reports and discussions. This is a long-term organization and hopefully a learning and iterative positive momentum where we can continue to evolve and grow. And these lessons learned, I think, are highly impactful. I'm always mindful of there are some things that were a moment in time or a function of the market environment, planning environment, et cetera, at the time. But there are things that we can learn and improve our process continue going forward. So I always appreciate that myself. I've got a few questions, but maybe committee members, any questions before I pepper a few? Okay, I'm happy to get started. Pulling up my notes. Overall, I think it looks like an amazing project in terms of just the mixed use nature of it, the location, the build quality, et cetera. You list a number of lessons learned. Maybe just for point of emphasis, what do you think is most meaningful as a learning going forward, as opposed to, some of the elements around maybe sanitary drain design, maybe a little less meaningful on a broader sort of programmatic basis, but just from your perspective and your involvement, how would you think is sort of like the big impact lessons learned?
Thank you for the question. Through the chair, the sanitary drains was a good one. All of it's good, and really it's the tweaks, the little things that add up to big things. For example, one of the things, because of the early date of this project, I mean, we were learning a lot. So one of the things that we found out in phase 1 when people were moving into the townhouses was that, oh man, they can't fit a queen-sized, a king-sized bed spring up the stairs. And then so it's like, oh, well, what are we going to do with that? And of course we've now included in our spec that there are hardline instructions for our architects to do a study to make sure that we can do things like that. And it is this kind of attention to detail and to our tenant sort of experience that that really is unique to our product, our process, and in fact, what we're asking our consultant teams to do and our construction teams to do. But I think that there are really particular things in and around amenities. I think Peter, my colleague Peter, actually had mentioned it earlier. We are looking to be much more focused on what we can do for our youth in terms of both interior and exterior amenities. I mean, we found that on interior amenities, we found that because of sort of typical design of multi-purpose rooms, that, you know, teens would get sort of shooed out of them for being teens. They are, I've got a couple of teens, I don't enjoy them some parts of my week. But they still need to exist and they still need to do that stuff that they do. And so we're really digging in now and trying to figure out, well, what does that look like in terms of inside and outside? Outside, it's actually a lot more straightforward. Basketball. Basketball specifically is something that really the youth in our neighborhoods really sort of find meaningful and gather around. Sports recreation in general, certainly in both Regent and Alex Park, we've got multi-sport courts, and there's a lot of uptake, and it makes a big difference. We have learned, a ton about shared facilities. So of the CED report that is included in the closeout report, we note that a lot of major incidents have actually kind of decreased since the revitalization is completed. Minor kind of irritation reports have increased. Now you would think be commensurate with increasing the density of population on a site. But we have found a quite sharp jump in false fire alarms. And this has to do with the way fire alarms and our life safety systems are programmed when there is a major shared infrastructure, like a parking garage with 3 high-rise buildings coming out of it. And so this is the kind of, there is a bit of evidence that we follow up on and find out that, oh, there are not only tweaks, but actually major systemic aspects that we need to pay attention to. And really going forward, trying to figure out, okay, well, what's the why underneath the why, and how do we really deal with it at its root causes? But really, gosh, all of it's golden. the little.
Oh, and I'm glad we're recording and incorporating going forward. And that actually nicely a nice tangent to my next question, which is around the CSU incidents. And you raise a good point. The per capita numbers. If we can maybe note as a follow up, I'd like to see that chart on a per capita basis, because I would say I was dismayed, if I can put it that way, in terms of the increases. You know, I think part of our thesis is that higher quality, more thoughtful built environment will lead to overall decreases in negative behavior incidents, and some of these categories are up, you know, significantly or not down significantly. Which again, it's not the be all, it's not drives everything. But you raise a good point. The per capita numbers is probably the right approach, because if we've got twice the population, you know, it's not sort of just absolute numbers. The cause, like, I get the parking incidents, I get the fire incidents. I'm surprised in the parking incidents we didn't fix that whatever it's called sooner, but it is what it is. The cause disturbance incidents is what I'm not sure what that is, other than someone's just reported something that's caused a disturbance. And why is that up, you know, 2 or 3 fold? Like, do we have a sense of that or no? I guess, or is that not really you're okay? You can pass it off that as a development person that, you know, it's less, it's more operational focused.
Through the chair, I don't have a particularly detailed answer on the cause disturbance, but it is something that I would chalk up to, incidents of a minor nature that are, noise complaints and annoyances such as that. And in fact, quite possibly linked to what I was mentioning about before with kind of having a space for youth to just do the youth things. And I think that that's it. It's one of these things that, we really want to pay attention to and want to create a place where you can be a bit more boisterous, and that's okay. I think that this is something that as we go on, we realize that when we're planning a community, it's not a condo community, or it's harder than a condo community because it is a condo community with something else, and that there are assumptions that you can make with the demographics of a condo community that you simply can't with our buildings, and they have implications not only in our amenity space design but our public space design down to our elevators. Really, like it's a pervasive scan that we're doing continuously, feeding back the stuff that we get from our communities and from our ops team and our colleagues there, to the design of the buildings.
Great, thank you. That's all I've got. I see two hands up. Venetia, why don't you take the lead on this one?
Sounds great. And I echo through the chair, I echo Nick's comments that it seems consistency in the reporting of lessons learned is really helpful for all of us as a collective, not just management, but certainly the board, in understanding, how are we being proactive and remembering these challenges down the line when we're looking at approvals for other sites. Related to Allenbury, I guess my question, since we addressed the lessons learned, would be on how the handover has been going. So the handoff between construction into operations, specifically, has the transition to ongoing operations and maintenance been smooth? Are there any unresolved issues in terms of warranty deficiencies related to handoff that you may be able to speak to? Sometimes, the nuances, like until you move a king mattress into a townhouse and you realize it's impossible, or you may get to a situation where the building has a little bit of time to operate and settle, and now the surprises start to come through. So just curious if there's any feedback on the handoff.
Through the chair, oh yeah, loads. And I mean, from the chair's earlier comment around plumbing layouts and drainage layouts, this is the stuff that we find out really only after we move people in and find out that the systems are actually kind of behaving in a really, really weird way, that were not predicted. Certainly things around how we design our garbage drop-off rooms and whether or not they account for Christmas and all those Amazon boxes and boxes and boxes. These are things that we found out almost immediately upon moving in, and these are things that we are always happy to be coordinating with our operations colleagues, and in fact finding out information from the ground, because really, as we see it, every bit of data that we get back from a real life circumstance, a real life bottleneck, is something that we can be proactive on in the next. So we really see the now close to 20 years of development work that this division and this organization have been doing as this ongoing study into what does social housing look like in the 21st century, right? And it's very, very, very different from really anything else that is being built now. We know that for sure.
Thank you.
Welcome. Over to you, Brian.
Just get back to my tenant in youth. I mean, TCHC, although is impacted by all the services needed, but I just wondered again whether there was any outreach to other organizations in their area that serve youth or other tenant populations that we've engaged with to bring them in so that they actually can be part of the solution to some of the challenges that you've identified. So that's sort of one. And my second part of the question is, with the condos being built there, was there any discussion with regards to ongoing jobs? Because all condos, as I live in one, require superintendents, they require certain management issues, and looking at employment possibilities for tenants in that, the ongoing jobs that are created in these type of projects where there's joint ventures where we're partnering with a number of condos that are being built, so that there may be opportunities for tenants in the buildings or even any tenants that we have for these new jobs that would be created. So there's two parts to that question.
Through the chair, so through the revitalization, we worked with several organizations, Harriet Tubman being one of the major organizations that supported one of our programs called the Community Animator Program, where we hired young people and adults for the community. And Harriet Tubman provided additional supports to engage young people, not only through our program, but into other programs that they had available. We also worked very closely in Allenbury Gardens with the library, the public schools, and the YMCA, and a local employment service provider, Springboard, to engage the community in different types of activities. And what was really beneficial about it is that the agencies were able to engage the community, and then the community started participating at a higher level with the agency programs and not just relying on TCHC programs. So that connection was paramount. Also at our community events, we invited everyone that lived in the community to spaces and invited all the local agencies to those events as well, to help build the network and reestablish connections, regardless of where people were relocated to. In the event of when they returned back, they had a stronger connection with the staff from those different agencies and city staff. So when it came back to social integration in the Allenbury community, it was a little bit of a easier transition. And staff are currently working within the development division and operations division to secure several community-focused services and agencies that are specializing in food security and youth engagement and media development as well. So I don't want to name the agencies just yet because we haven't secured the use of space agreements. It would be kind of awkward to tell our board these agencies will be serving the community when we don't have a formal agreement in place. But we are working towards that.
I think those kind of lessons learned about bringing projects on in a very positive way, certainly for other projects that we're doing, is hopefully being documented for lessons learned.
All the lessons learned are documented and represented throughout the processes as we engage in new decision making. So whether it be an architect that Michael's team's working on, or a community development approach that the engagement teams are working on, we are trying to ensure that all of the information over the last 15 years is channeled in and represented as part of future decisions that are going to impact the future.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. We'll move a motion to receive. Can I have someone move that motion, please? Thank you, Venetia. All in favor? Thank you. Carried. Thank you very much. Appreciate that discussion. Next up, is it 12A? 12A, SOGR variance analysis for up till May 31st. And I believe there was a question on that. So the floor is yours.
Thanks, Nick, through the chair. Just a quick question for Lily and Noah on how the future reporting for SOGR is going to be impacted by the work we just saw completed from GEI. We know strategically it's going to take a long time to get to where we have to go, but it was just sort of like the appetizer in a menu of reporting on SOGR. So thinking ahead, are we going to get some alignment from the insights that we saw in the GEI report? Please and thanks.
Thank you for the question. It's a good one. And through the chair, yes, we will be. The GI report identifies a couple of areas that can be tied in with this reporting. The first being just about the balance of demand and planned work and what the appropriate what that appropriate mix should be and what better controls we can put in place, and also recognizes that those controls are already in place and large, and we're seeing the effectiveness. So that's one area you're going to see, I think, a tie-in. The other is better forecasting. Right now, we do this, and this report speaks to it like a straight line forecasting. And that's, to get where we need to go. There are hundreds of projects that underlie this reporting, and each one of them are managed by a project manager who has a sophisticated idea about how that cash flow is going to go. So we have that data. We need to bring our technology and our SOP and how the staff reports on that, so that we have more intelligent and better forecasting on that spend to year end, rather than this straight line approach, which has us explaining variances to that quarterly that could be far more accurate and telling. And the other thing that the report, I'll just say on the third note that the report points to, is just making a connection to governance and at levels of governance and board and committee about a more project level approach to reporting. You see very sort of large categories of spending here, and that's appropriate for a lot of the discussion. But the report does point to bringing more project level reporting as well. And I think that the group can benefit from a little more transparency through that reporting and seeing examples of project and project management. We see some of that with the change order reports that we bring forward, but I think there's other things we can do to provide more transparency and a more sophisticated view to the work we do.
Thanks, Noah. I think the only thing I would add on to that is just when looking at the report in its current structure, a tricky aspect tends to be like the capital carry forward risk. So it would appear just on a straight line basis that we're continuing to under deliver against plan, or there's a risk of compounding backlog. And when you think of it just purely in isolation on a straight line basis, that can get worrisome in terms of, are we compounding a backlog long term and therefore making our situation worse if that prioritization isn't clear? But I know you will be meeting with your team with that lens and with the GEI report to sort of address that in parallel with Lily's team, because like the last thing you want to do is take a straight line report on first blush and think, wow, these are a lot of negative numbers. If we don't do something about it, we're only going to be digging ourselves into a further hole.
Completely agree. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, we may want to take a 5-minute recess. Oh, I think we're good.
Okay. Any other questions on this item? Okay. Motion to receive. Thank you. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Next, 12B. 12B. And this was the elevators. Is there a question on that?
Just a quick one through the chair. Noah, previous to your joining, Daisy had came to BIFAC with a budget allocation related to elevator repair that was due to a TSSA, like a code update requirement. And I'm just wondering to what degree the Schindler Director Ward procurement is impacted by code updates required to our elevators, or is it simply just this is the portion of both service and demand work due within the portfolio where they have their equipment installed?
I would have to get back to you post-meeting specifically on the elements that are included that would be related to the new legislation, but the new contract cover is up to date in terms of those requirements. And in fact, we've even there's a step up for a monthly rather than quarterly inspections on site as well, included in this package. But I can get back to the group post meeting with a takedown of the services that are included that relate to the new legislation specifically.
Thank you. That'd be helpful for when we're approving any future procurement awards on elevator.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, I'll ask for a motion to approve. Thank you. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. What do we have next?
13C.
12C.
No.
13C. Oh, wow. Nice. All right, 13C. KPMG Cybersecurity Advisory Services. Do we hold this as a questions or was it a presentation?
I think it was held by Director Sherhardidi.
Okay. Questions or comments on this one? I think, Nisha, you had this one.
Through the chair, Lily, this is just in general, if you could speak to the continuation of KPMG's mandate related to these services, that would be great.
Thank you, the chair. Thanks, Director, for the question. So KPMG, this is a phase 2 of our cybersecurity strategy. So I do want to highlight for the committee, KPMG is one of the 5 vendor records being recommended by the city, specifically through the CISO's office. So as outlined in the report, this is to ensure the continuity of services and also reduce the onboarding cost and some of the phase 1 work they have already done for us. For example, in a very high level, like the incident response plan, the business continuity planning, and also the disaster recovery planning, as well as some of the policies. This is also in line with their phase 1 work to continue to close the gap and address the deficiencies being identified by the AG's report, as well as the CISO's 2 programs, confirmation programs, one for IT, one for OT.
Got it. So to that end, Lily, between the AG and CISO reports, we're continuing phase 2. Do we have a further extension that we would expect beyond this, even if it's ongoing maintenance for KPMG?
Possibly. So for the scope of work identified for phase 2 work, it's more surrounding the governance and the framework and some of the key elements, not just from the awareness training, but more also in terms of the infrastructure and also network upgrades. That's gonna take quite some time. It's gonna be more than 1 year to be able to implement those elements. But on the side note, we also collaborate very closely with the city, both the CISO office and technology services, to say if there are services we can leverage, and then also in terms of aligning the work they already have underway. To be able to close those action items.
Excellent. Thank you.
Any other questions on 13C? Okay, ask for a motion to approve. Thank you. All in favor? Carried. 13D, Microsoft Enterprise Agreement. I think we had a question on that.
Yeah, through the chair, just very quickly I can't remember if it's the CISO report or the HE report from this time last year. We had a commentary around our habit and hygiene related to our Microsoft licenses in 18. I just wanted to make sure that in what we were approving today, there was some effort to kind of clean up any superfluous accounts or logins. This is something that happens to every single business. The bigger you are, the harder it is to manage. But just that we were true to count, because I've had many instances where that just keeps rolling until it becomes a snowball. So that was my main question.
Through the chair, the agreement itself, the process of actually executing on the agreement actually does have that built in. We've done a round end of last year. We did another round just now, and we're preparing for another round, which happens 60 days before the agreement needs to be executed, where Microsoft's licensed software advisor will come in and actually do another scan, a technology scan, to ensure that the license counts that we actually sign up for that agreement is sufficiently recognized. In terms of the overall ability to ramp up licenses and ramp down licenses, the agreement allows us to scale back if necessary at the annually. So once a year around the October 1st, we'll be able to scale down as well. Microsoft allows us to add at any time, but only allows us to scale back once a year.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Yeah, go ahead.
I did want to hold this because this is actually going to be one of two agreements that we will have with Microsoft. This agreement is the software license agreement. Once we understand the full spend of the agreement, they will provide a quote for the maintenance and support agreement that will be coming. So while we might get a budgetary in the coming month, the actual will be coming fairly close to the end of summer, early fall, which is why we wanted to give you visibility, because we are at 9.2. And when we look at that maintenance agreement, we could be exceeding.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments on this item? Okay, I'll ask for a motion to approve. Thank you. All in favor? Carried. And I believe that's the end of the public agenda for today. So with that, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn the public session. Thank you. Always lots of volunteers for this one. All in favor? Carried. Thank you, everybody, for a good meeting with lots of good meat to discuss today.
Those good questions.
We're gonna go back to in camera for the last item.